So I made a Pwnage Olympics entry video, but I never uploaded it because I didn't feel like it fit in any of the categories. Like, it just didn't feel right to enter it in any of the categories. What else can I say about it? But I mean, I should have been more category minded when making the video, but I just wanted to make fun of DawahFilms. So that's this video. You guys are gonna get to see the video with it. This is the Pwnage X Games. So welcome to the very first Pwnage X Games, a direct ripoff of Coughlin's Pwnage Olympics. Anyone else wants to enter, then feel free. So here it is. This is my original Pwnage video responding to DawahFilms. Enjoy. DawahFilms bills himself as a super-intelligent smart theist. The only thing this man worships more than logic is Allah himself. May leprosy be upon him. All you have to do is listen to Dawah for 2 or 3 minutes at most, and it becomes abundantly clear that he not only believes he is smarter than any atheist infidel out there, he believes he's smarter than everyone. Well, I'll be the judge of that. Here is Dawah now, telling us about how Moby Dick is like his most favoritist book of all time, sharing some of his deep, contemplative, intellectually blessed, theisty thoughts about a certain chapter in Moby Dick.
Many people have mixed emotions about the book. Some say that it's very dry, very boring. Some chapters don't make any sense, like the one on the whale's anatomy. But a more observant reader, one who is trained almost to read between the lines, will notice that that particular chapter, the one on whale's anatomy, is really almost like a parody on the theologian's attempt at deciphering or describing the attributes of God.
Okay, alright. I'm totally with you. To the average, low-brow, beer-chugging, paste-eating non-theist who's never been properly trained, brainwashed, indoctrinated, mentally enslaved, this chapter you speak of probably just seems like a bunch of poorly written bullshit that barely manages to make any sense at all. Clearly the infidel is not the ideal man for the job. What sort of person might be really good at creatively interpreting boring, confused pieces of ancient literature into something a bit more passable? What group or demographic is really good at coming up with explanations and apologetics for shit that shouldn't make any sense to a reasonable person? Oh, that's right, the highly religious. And especially the religions of Abraham, both Christianity and Islam. When you said, read in between the lines, you really meant twist and obscure viciously, alter and pervert until it becomes what I want it to be.
What I mean to say is that there seems to always be a notion of context, but it's always either ignored or it's fabricated by a great majority of individuals. And the reason I bring up this concept of context, or the factors in which determine an interpretation of a particular event or statement or scheme of ideas, is that particularly in philosophical, historical, or religious discussions, context, as I stated before, is either ignored or fabricated, and is never really researched or understood to its fullest degree. Even life itself has a context.
Wow! Looks like we got ourselves a real-life genius here, folks. You just blew my fucking mind. With your Islamic ponderings of philosophical wonder and Muslimy beardiness. So this is the sort of wisdom I've been missing out on by not believing in the invisible man that you love so dearly. Look, man, you are trying to turn the concept of context into a blanket defense for justifying just about any morally shameful or an intellectually repugnant lesson your little holy book contains. And the entire effort is so ridiculously obvious and transparent that frankly it's a little embarrassing. I mean, it's almost uncomfortable to watch, man. Here's a little newsflash for you. The average thinking person, and especially those who would engage in discussions of this sort or even click on your video in the first place, the sort of person who's taking the time to read a few things for themselves, Generally, that sort of person has a fairly good understanding of the context surrounding any of the stories in your little holy book. I mean, granted, you can never fully understand the context of a situation you were not a part of, in a place you've never specifically been to, a time you did not live in. But I'm pretty sure most of us get the fucking general idea. The Quran does not contain tales set in the late 70s Miami disco scene. It's from a much older time, and over the centuries, the context of the human condition and what is considered acceptable and what sorts of behavior are no longer tolerated has changed and will continue to change and shift around immensely. And your ancient holy book contains within it instructions and moral guidance for how to behave in a world which was surrounded by completely different context than that of today's. So different, in fact, that you express great frustration at how so many of us fail to understand the context of the times in which the Quran was written. Given that context is so important, and given that it is constantly evolving along with the story of the human race, almost no book could possibly be a divinely inspired, unchanging moral guideline for all of mankind for as long as he exists on this planet. In order for this to be the case, it would have to be a book which contained instructions or rules which would apply to mankind in any context at any time throughout its history. Because I think there are at least a few things, a very short list, at least so far, of things that have always been wrong as long as civilized humans have existed. Murder, for one. Rape, for another. I don't know, slavery, maybe? What do you think about slavery? Should slavery make the list?
You often hear people say, well, slavery is just wrong in all time periods. And you know what? I really don't believe this. Allow me to explain why I think this way.
No, you allow me to explain to you why you think that way. You think that because the immoral act of enslaving another human being and then forcing them to obey your every command under penalty of injury or death is championed in your particular holy book. And this forces you to have to try and think of some sort of reason why it's actually okay. Think about that. You have invented a way of justifying slavery to yourself because of your religious affiliation. Let's say that sometimes owning another human being as personal property is the right thing to do. In certain situations and in certain times, capturing and enslaving another human being is actually taking the moral high road. Assuming all of this is true, are there any places or situations on this planet in today's world where you believe that slavery is moral and just? Because if your holy book is truly timeless, then surely there must be.
That the Quran is actually a book for all times and all places. It cannot be understood in that light unless you incorporate context.
As far as I'm concerned, in the context of the present human condition, some of the vile concepts which are championed and approved of by the Quran, these are no longer acceptable. The Quran itself is no longer acceptable. It is no longer acceptable as a guide for living a good and moral existence, and probably never was in the first place, even when considering context. So I'm very sorry to inform you that your argument fails. Your strategy is weak. Your beard, however, is magnificent, and your pseudo-intellectual religious apologetics nonsense babbling is... it's strong. Thank you for trying. Hopefully you have become enlightened. Hopefully I have enlightened you. I am OGjimbo. He is DawahFilms. And this has been my entry in the Pwnage Olympics. I hope you're enjoying the games. Peace. I'll see you guys in the next video.